Gill, a Key Mortgage Loan Officer, and I am very excited to hear one of my favorite people in the real estate industry today on the People Not Titles podcast. The broker manager of the Naperville Baird & Warner office, who also happens to be my father, Bill Gill from Naperville, as he likes to be called. So let's go.
Hi, this is Steve Kemp with the People Not Titles podcast, and we're in a very unique place today with one of my very good friends and just an exemplary real estate professional, Bill Gill. Bill, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Bill had a suggestion for us to do this in a very unique location. We're actually sitting in a trailer in Plainfield. There's a race car behind us. And there's a bunch of other vehicles all parked outside this trailer that are just really interesting. So, Bill, before we get into career, let's do some fun talk and just talk a little bit about how this came to be and what this race car means to you and what's happening with that.
Yeah, so thank you, Steve. That's interesting. My dad was a lifelong vehicle enthusiast, boats, trucks. He's deceased. He passed away in 2011, and I actually have every boat that he owned when he passed away, and one of his cars as well. And then I just kind of took it to a different level than what he was at. And it's kind of funny. I was thinking when I was a little kid, I always would make like little matchbox little houses in the sand with Hot matchboxes and Hot Wheels, and thought, boy, it'd be fun to have a lot of cars, boats, and trucks, and that's what I wound up doing. So
wow,
and it was kind of nutty, but yeah.
Okay, so you've been collecting them, and now you're racing.
Yes, 5 years ago I met, actually through Baird & Warner, part of our Ascend program, which is our training for top agents. I met a woman named Debbie Mayer, who was our speaker, and she and her boyfriend Don Carone raced this, what you see behind us, these Formula Vs, which was it's the most affordable class of road racing. And I talked to her. She said, you ought to come racing with us. She thought I like cars, boats, trucks. Strangely, I collected a lot of the same stuff her boyfriend did. She said, you should do this. And I was like, oh, yeah. I'm too busy. It was the time. I'm thinking, oh, that was a nice gesture. And then I ran into him at the leading real estate conference, the leading real estate companies of the world. Their annual conference at the time was down in South Beach. And I wound up meeting Debbie's boyfriend, and he said, you ought to come racing with us. And my one of the phrases my dad always used to say echoed in my head, which was, "What are you waiting for, pal? What are you waiting?
Done.
Do it now. If you can do it and you can't, you want to, do it now. You never know." And so I was going to race one season. My wife reminds me, rent a car, and I did, and I rented a car from Don and Debbie, and then I said, this is fun. I thought I should buy a car, and then I bought another car, and then I bought a car that my one son is now racing with me. So anyway, it just evolved, but it's just an absolute blast, and a nice, great group of people in the club, and a lot of fun.
Awesome. So what do you like most? Like what itch does racing scratch for you?
That adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
I think like many people in sales, many people in real estate have some form of ADD, right? Attention deficit disorder. And what's interesting when you're in that race car, you focus. Everything else goes out, and you're just focused on that mission of driving. And it's this is not autocrossing where there's one car on a track. This is you're on a track, racing wheel to wheel with other cars, and because we're in what's called an open wheel class, oftentimes we're racing with cars that are 3 and 4 times faster than what these cars are. And then boy, oh boy, you've got to be paying attention, and you just have that focus. And when you get done, there's just like, oh my gosh, you just feel top of the world.
Wow.
So a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So Bill, we are finishing up actually a year of podcasts, and the podcast is really about people reaching their human potential, particularly in sales, real estate, professional sales, and not trying to stroke you, but if if there's one guy that I would say, this is a guy you need to buy a cup of coffee and talk to him about how he got started, where he's at, you've reached. You have the top office in one of the top real estate firms in Chicagoland. You have. Are you now doing $1 billion in real estate?
You know, I don't have the final numbers, but it's around. I think it's going to be right around $950 million.
So, incredible. And I remember maybe a couple years ago, you kind of said that. And we're like, did I even say that number? You know?
Well, 2015, starting 2014 was our previous best year at about 560 million, and I thought, okay, I'd like to kind of double that, but $1 billion had a nice, round number to it. And I think a lot of people thought I was crazy, and I even kind of wondered about myself sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that's not new. And,
and your office is really the who's who of real estate. It's like going through the Real Estate Hall of Fame with all these wonderful agents and brokers that you have. But it didn't start there, right?
No.
So I'd like to dive into a little bit about how you got started in real estate and some of the key points of success for you there, and then get into the three big challenges that you overcame in your life.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting, those three challenges, I think, were kind of coincided with some of the turning points. But my dad was a union printer, and he retired from that job, and my mom was basically a stay-at-home mom. She did some administrative work through the years, and a lot of volunteer work. And I just, we lived in kind of a modest house that looked like every other house on the block, and I had the neighborhood we lived in the high school I went to. Pretty much everyone that I went to school with was very successful and very wealthy, and we had a lot of friends that were very successful and wealthy, and I always thought that was something I thought, well, I'd like to figure out how to do that. And
yeah.
Most everyone that I knew had, in some version or another, accumulated their, some or part or all of their success through real estate. And so
that made an impression.
That made an impression. About age 14, I tried to get my parents to start buying income and investment property, and they again thought I was nuts. Like,
wow,
you're
like the Michael J. Fox kid. Right?
It was Steve. That's so funny because I watched that show thinking this is kind of the life I live. My parents are kind of laid back, and son, you're in high school. Here's a case of beer. I'm like, okay, parents, don't do this. Why are you doing this? And anyway. So I thought, well, real estate. So I got out of, when I was in college, I worked my way through school, college at DuPage 2 years, and then Northern Illinois. I got a degree in business management, and when I was at Northern, I took a class in real estate, and the real estate licensing class at the time, and it was handled differently than it is today. It was a longer process, and I took the class, and I thought, well, this would be something good, and then I got out of school. I had been dating my wife all through college, even though we never went through to the same schools, same colleges. Okay. But you get out of college and you're like, well, what are we going to do? We're going to break up or get married, and so I wound up getting engaged. But my first job was working for Goodyear Tire, and a man used to come into Goodyear Tire and say, he was a real estate broker, and he'd say, what are you doing here? He said, you ought to get your real estate license. You ought to get your real estate license. And I said, and he kept kind of, bending my ear. And at the time, what I thought I really wanted to do was be a property manager. One of the ways I got through college was...
Was he a broker, Bill?
He was a broker, yeah.
Okay.
He was kind of land sales, lots and land. And
he saw something in you and said, hey, what are you doing here? You got the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I had I went and bought my first piece of investment real estate when I was in high school and college. I was in the odd jobs business, so it was a lot of property maintenance. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'd like to, the property manager in college was a very successful man who had a beautiful girlfriend, became wife, and was driving a vintage Corvette, and he owned real estate. I'm like, I want to do this, right? So anyway, I started on the path, and I said, I started talking to this guy, and I was working on the investment property. My wife and I were engaged. I was working all kinds of hours trying to rehab this property, and we were, getting ready for the wedding, and I was just really frustrated. And my wife said, you're not going to stay at Goodyear. Why don't you just quit now, finish working on the building, so we have a place when we get back from our honeymoon. And she said, and then look for a job in property management. And at the time, you had to be in real estate for 2 years, and then or a year, I'm sorry, practicing before you could sit for your broker's exam, right? And then if you were a broker, then I could go open my own property management company, right? So that's kind of the path I was going. My wife said, "Fine, just go do that." So
She gave you the green light.
She gave me the green light.
Okay.
I quit my job the next day.
Wow.
It was didn't really have
That's
any money,
fantastic.
but
Yeah.
my parents were supportive. Her parents were supportive.
And she was, and so
she was
she was in your
supportive.
corner.
And her father owned a moving and storage company. I knew I could always unload trucks and make cash money.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite as risky as it sounded.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So I quit. I started down the path. Was rehabbing this place. One day I was going to lunch, head to toe in dirt. And I was walking down the street, and there was this little real estate office, Resny Realty, and I kind of paused and looked at the window, and it said, property management, sales, insurance. Remember when they did that?
Yeah.
And then it said help wanted, and I was looking, and this gentleman, older gentleman, he's probably my age now. No, but this older gentleman came out and said, "So what caught your eye, young man?" Kind of like a carnival barker. And he says, "What caught your eye?" And I said, "Well," I told him my story. He said, "Well, come right in," and we sat down, and it turns out that, my wife was a teacher, he and his wife were both teachers. My bachelor's from Northern Illinois, that's where he and his wife went back when it was a normal college or a teaching school, teaching school. And he had invested in real estate when he was young, and he rehabbed and so on. And he basically said I could be he had 2 older daughters, older than me. They didn't live in the area. I could be the son he never had, and I could, take over his business and his buildings. And he did some property management. I could eventually buy all his buildings. And,
This is my lucky day.
I'm like, this is it, So I went and told my mother-in-law. I said, "Yeah, I took this job." He agreed for property management services to pay me $200 a month. Covered all my startup costs, and then I was on commission sales, right? And my mother-in-law was thrilled.
Wow, you have a job.
Oh, she was like, "What? This is ridiculous. I don't think you should marry my daughter." Okay. But it worked out. So I started Resny. After 3 years there, I said, I don't. If I was, the property management wasn't intriguing, but the brokerage side kind of intrigued me. And I thought, well, maybe I should look into that. But I thought, I don't really know enough to run a brokerage company. I should get some training. And
So, Bill, if I might pause you there. So,
right
there's 2 things I caught just while you're talking there. The first thing is, there was a time where you had to make a decision.
Yeah.
And you could still be a good year right now doing whatever you were doing.
Yep.
But there was something in your heart, but you had to make a break. And then, good fortune smiles on you, and someone is willing to take you underneath their wing.
Yeah.
Even just for a little bit of time, provide a little shelter, a little knowledge, teaching, education. So great, I love it.
Well, yeah, and I think I think Steve, you make a really good point. I think there's always people in your life, if you pay attention, who are encouraging, right? Who are suggesting and trying to help. And the question is, do you listen to them or not?
Yes.
Kind of like going back to the racing. I'm kind of like, I got invited not once but twice.
Yeah.
Thinking,
I really like racing.
I should try this.
Yes.
And then I found out I loved it. So
absolutely.
It's listening
Awareness.
for the awareness of those opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So I worked there I worked at. I decided I really needed to get some experience. I went to work for a man named Ed Hall, who's just an icon in West suburban real estate. I was talking the other day. He's got over 53 years in the real estate business.
Amazing.
Just an incredible guy. And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to, I think the next step is to, manage a real estate office." He says, "Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you?" He says, "If you come to work here, I promise I'll help you accomplish your goal." And he did that. He was true to his word, and inside of 2 years, he had me managing an office. And at the time, the company I worked for, the president said, "You know why I'm hiring you?" And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because Ed Hall gave you his absolute highest recommendation."
Wow.
And I said, "You know what? Wow." And so I went into that office. Yeah. Ran that office for 5 years, and then wound up going to a different company in downtown Hinsdale. And I had, there's more to that story, but I've been intrigued by the Hinsdale market, and I managed for that company for 5 years, and then kind of felt I'd gone as far as I could go there, and I got a call from Steve Baird and said, you know, hey, would you like to talk to us? Actually, I got a call. Steve and I had talked in the past, and I got a call from John Matthews, and he had called me a number of times, and he had said, you know, what would you be interested in doing? And he said, you know, I said, well, I'd like to go into the regional level, you know, and he said, okay, well, I've got this branch and that branch, and I said, you know, no, and then one day he said, you know, Bill, he said, we have something in the regional that, you know, level if you'd like to talk about it, and talk about it. And I said, sure. And then the first meeting was with Steve Baird. And we sat down, who's just a great man. And, you know, I bounced around every 3 to 5 years, and I'm shocked to tell you that this will be 2021 will be 19 years I worked for Baird & Warner.
Wow.
I found the right place.
Wow.
And the right
2002
person.
that was, and then
Yes, correct.
And then when did you? So that's amazing. What had you saying yes then, Bill?
You know, the culture of the company. You know, the culture of the company, the philosophy that Steve Baird had about what was important, you know, putting people first, helping people accomplish their goals, you know, looking at, he's very pragmatic and practical and realistic and down to earth.
Kind of an everyday guy.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I always joke, and I've told Steve this,
Yeah.
that when people meet him, they're like, well, what did you think? They're like, well, I don't know. They're like, well, why? He said, well, he wasn't what I expected. I said, well, what did you expect? And they're like, I don't know. He was just normal. I've told that story to Steve, you know, so
that's great.
he laughs, but, you know,
It's a compliment,
you know, that's who he is, and he is just that person, but he listens to people, and he helps them accomplish their goals, right?
Yeah.
And that's the whole philosophy of the company. And for the first time, the first organization I'd come to where I felt completely comfortable, because I felt like I tracked the same way. That's how I've always tried to run business in life, is to get to know people, understand what's important to them, and help them achieve their goals.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note that after 19 years, you know, you're a hair on fire race car, go-getter, ambitious, and you still feel like there's a place for you here. Which means that you are part of the growth plan. Which is really amazing.
Yeah, you know, and I'll one of the things that was interesting, you know, we're running about 260 agents, and I said, I was talking to Steve one day, and I said, you know, you know, I'd like to get to the next level for the office. I'd like to figure out how to run an office of 500 people. And he said, okay. He said, hop on a plane, find the largest office and leading real estate companies of the world, hop on a plane and go see what they're doing. And I'm like, wow. Okay. You know, I just said, you know, it wasn't like, well, you can't do that, or why do you want to do that? He said, that's what you want to do, here's some action steps. Funny backstory is, I've been to the leading RE conferences, and I started asking around, and they're like, I don't know, you might be the largest office in leading RE. They're out there.
Yeah. You got to find them.
But we got to find them, and we figured out kind of a system in the meantime, working with, you know, that's another thing I just love.
Multi-tiered leadership management.
Oh, the collaboration. You know, so you and I have talked about, you know, what a 500-person office looks like. Sarah, you know, in our Sarah Pelton and I, Pelton. I always forget. I knew her by her maiden name too. So, you know, Sarah and I have talked about Wendy Dom, our, you know, and one of our executives, and Laura Ellis, and you know, and we've collaborated and kind of put together a system that's you know, working out, you know, pretty well. And you know, again, we got to, you know, well, we're almost at that billion, and you know, then my question is, all right, how do we double it?
Yeah, and what's interesting, you know, when I walk into your office, I know that you're probably a volcano inside, but you seem very calm. You seem like you got your arms around everything that you're doing. So it feels like there's capacity. Even for the youngest, newest agent, there's an opportunity for them to come in and still be a rock star. You know.
Well, you know, and that's interesting, because one of the things that, and really, I'm going to say, Laura Ellis, it kind of planted this seed in me. And the question is, like, you know, the question, well, are you know, 500 agents? Can you do that? Or, you know, can you do that? Instead of that question, it's, okay, what would that look like? How would you do that? And that's a very different, how you would accomplish a goal is very different than, well, I don't know if you can accomplish that goal, right? They're two very different ways of looking at the same issue. And, you know, and that's one of the things that I just love about the company, is it's that attitude of, what do you want to do? All right, what does that look like? How would you do that? How would you outline that? And then, you can't get bored in an environment like that.
Well, you're creating,
right?
You're a co-creator with Steve Barrett.
Yeah. No one's putting any barriers.
Yeah.
No one's putting any, ceilings on it.
That's fantastic. So, Bill, yeah, I know that Mary, one of your daughters,
Yes.
is a new loan officer.
Yes.
So you probably talked to her about, young salespeople and what they should be doing. But if there's a young salesperson out there just getting started,
Yes.
what are a couple of key points that you give them? No matter, hey, if they're selling, loans, real estate, whatever.
Yeah.
What do you think is a focus?
Yeah, and that's a great question. There's a gentleman I'll reference too. I always feel I have no new ideas, right? They've all
Absolutely,
come from somewhere
steal it
else.
all.
Guy by the name of Mickey Straub runs a company called Sales Activity Manager, and what he basically focuses on, he works in the world of sales, is what are the key most important things you need to be doing with your time to achieve the success you want, right? And whatever's in track, what's most important, and what gets tracked tends to get done, right? So in any sales activity or arena, there are specific steps. They're very similar. Usually it's generating a customer of some fashion.
Yeah.
So
Prospecting, generating leads,
Right.
building relationships, something like that.
So if you don't have that prospect today, what are you doing today to get that prospect tomorrow? And per the Stephen Covey book, right, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, what is the most important thing for your current and long-term success, right? And working on that as much as absolutely possible. The most important things, and putting aside the rest. It's easy to, especially if you're in sales where there's no one holding you accountable and you kind of control your own schedule, it's easy to come in and play office, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to
drive
be
grandma
busy.
to the airport.
Oh yeah,
You know what
or
I
you
mean?
can be busy looking at reports, and you can
Yeah.
be busy doing that. I know for what I do managing a branch office, it's recruiting, and
Yeah.
if I haven't done something in the world of recruiting every day, I am not doing my job. I am not advancing the ball on what it takes to be successful in my office, right? End of story.
Yeah.
I could make up excuses. Oh, I was too busy. I had agents who had important questions. If I'm not recruiting, I'm not doing my job. Because that is the single most important, the key thing. Is it important then to help agents? Is it important to help the clients? Yes, absolutely it is.
Yes.
We put a good program for coaching, training, and all that in place. But if I'm not bringing in, I could have the best coaching and training platform in the world, but if we haven't brought anyone in to take advantage of it, we're not going to make any money. We're not going to sell a house.
For sales, that'd be prospecting, right?
Prospecting,
Yeah.
absolutely, driving that business.
And I always said that if a successful salesperson should be able to answer the question, what do I do when I have nothing to do?
Yes.
And
Yes,
if I know the answer to that
great.
question, I
love
can
that.
make things happen.
I
So,
love that. I haven't
yeah.
heard that, but I'm using it.
Yeah, there you go. I think I made that up myself.
I'll credit Steve Kemp.
Okay, so that's great, and let's get into, Bill, just the some of the hurdles that you've overcome.
Sure.
Because it wasn't just all uphill for you.
It's there were a couple of defining moments, right?
Yeah.
There's 3 that come to mind so far, right?
Yeah.
What's around the corner? But the first was we were one of the things that, going back to that ADD, right, is I was always kind of thinking about doing this or that, or maybe I should do something different. And even after college, I was thinking about law school, right? And so I was still, it was the first 5 years of my career at Resney Realty and Coldwell Bank, or, at my first office, I wasn't really feeling settled. I wasn't, 100% sure that I was doing the right thing at the right time in the right place, right? And I'm an out loud processor, and my wife is not. She's an internal processor, and I'm processing. She was pregnant, and she said at the time, and she says, you know what, you're not really seeming happy. You're not seeming settled. You talked about law school. Why don't you just go to law school? And I'm like, what? She said, yeah. She said, my sister's an empty nester. She could watch our baby. She had just finished her master's degree, so she got a nice bump in salary for teaching. She said, we're not going to be, living high, but we'll get by, and go full time, go to law school. You'll be a lawyer, and then you can just shut up, okay? You don't have to tell me anymore about all the things that are going on in your head. Yeah, I get it, sweetheart. So I started looking into law school, and I started talking to attorneys and one thing and another. And it's kind of interesting. We started investigating. This one attorney said, "Well, you know what? I started out as a first-year lawyer. You know, like,
How much I got paid?
The time was like $35,000. I'm like, oh, I just made $50,000.
Yeah, why don't I go backwards, right?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But I was still on that path. And then I called it the fateful day that we went to the doctor and we found out that we were not having one baby, but we were having twins.
Whoa!
Yeah. So all of a sudden, you know, I'm not going to law school. My wife's not going back to teaching. Her sister's not going to, you know, stay home and take, or you know, not going to be an empty nester taking care of our twins, right? So I was in sales at that time, you know, about 5 years. I was doing okay, you know. And yet not to the level that I now needed to sustain. You know, I needed to have my income, my wife's income, plus, you know, insurance.
Yeah.
You know,
And an extra mouth to feed.
Oh yeah, 2 extra months.
Yeah.
Right? So like, holy cow.
Yeah.
So that was one of the challenging periods. Sometimes I'll call it the dark period, where I just, like, I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law, my wife's sister, was starting a business, and she turned me on to a guy who was speaking on WTTW at the time.
Channel 11.
Channel 11, Les Brown.
Wow. Yes.
He was a motivational speaker, and he had, it was back in the days of VHS, and we would record.
I love Les Brown.
Isn't he great?
Yeah.
She would visit a lot, and we would record his shows, his programs, and I would listen and watch and rewatch and rewatch and rewatch. And then, you know, things then, you know, to that point is if you know, one of my favorite quotes is, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right?
Yes.
A woman I worked with by the name of Joan Smothers said, hey, you should take this Floyd Wickman course that I'm in. It was called Sweat Hogs at the time. You should take this course. And I said, well, fine. It was expensive, but I took the course, and suddenly, you know, everything that, you know, was being taught was resonating with me. And, you know, and then I started focusing on, like, okay, you know, to the prospecting. What do I need to do to drive my business? Well, I think in 1991 I had about 4.1 million in sales volume and then in the first quarter of 1992, I was at 2.3 million. My business jumped that much.
Wow.
And my friend Koya Smith said to me at the time, you know, she said, Bill, she said, you and I always did about the same business. Then you found out you were having twins, and I don't know what happened. Well, the story I tell is, for the first time, Steve, I was focused.
Yeah.
You know, that ADD stopped, and I'm like, you know what? I've got to stay focused to getting, you know, to making this money, to being successful, to support my wife and these children.
So I wonder if that second child, whoever came out last,
Mary,
Mary, she might be entitled to a cut of the profits.
Yeah, she might be. Yeah, she was a big motivator.
She's got her cut probably.
Big motivator. Yeah, Mary's doing well.
Wow, that's great. So that's a defining moment where and of course, it's a blessing. But I can totally identify where you are caught with something where all of a sudden there's a new life, and you know this is serious now.
You know, and on the cusp of that, I sat there saying, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I've been in real estate 5 years. I felt like I was working every available hour.
Yeah.
I felt like I knew what I was doing. I'm like, what I'm going to have to double.
There was another level you could.
There was another level, but I couldn't see that until I was faced with that challenge.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was important. And shortly after they were born, I had expressed an interest, to Ed Hall, that I wanted to get into management. Well, I'd been passed over. It was a big theme at that company. Yeah. I'd been passed over for an office that then all of a sudden surprisingly came available, kind of in crisis, and then they needed, they needed me, and I stepped in that office and I started managing. And that went well for about 3.5 years, and we had some good sales, and the market was good and whatnot. And then, in the meantime, I was applying for some other offices in that company, looking for that next level, right? And I was passed over, a couple of 3 different times. And so I was getting frustrated, and at that point, the market wasn't too good, and I was not understanding all that I needed to be doing in that role that I was in at the time, managing a branch. I was still fairly new at it. And so all of a sudden I'm like, in the meantime, we had another 2 children.
Okay.
As my wife always says, 92, 94, 96. Those were the birth years of our kids. And we had another 2 children. And my career just wasn't going where I wanted, and all of a sudden we started getting in a little. My wife was a stay-at-home mom at this point. We started getting into a financial pinch, and it wasn't, you know, we weren't racking up debt, but we weren't putting money into savings. We were just getting by, and I was not happy.
Yeah.
And I was really thinking to myself, you know, I don't like managing real estate offices. Like this is a terrible job. I'm going to go back into sales, you know, and just, you know, list and sell houses. I hate managing a real estate. I'm just unhappy. And I got a call from a regional manager at another company, and he said, you know, how would you like to manage how would you like to talk to me about managing an office in Hinsdale? And I said, absolutely. and there's a funny story there too, which I tell in sales, is you got to be prepared for the yes.
Yeah.
If you're going to ask a question as a salesperson, you got to be prepared for the yes. And I said, yeah, Frank, that'd be great. When do you want to meet? And he's like, oh yeah, meet. Okay, hold on. You know, he didn't have his calendar out. He didn't. You know, he was like, oh, I'm doing my job. I'm making another call. You know.
Yeah. Right. Call the next one on the list.
The next one. Yeah. You interested? No. Okay. Bye. You interested? No. Okay. Bye. You know. I'm like, yeah. When do you want to meet? Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. You know. So we picked. I said, great. Where do you want to meet?
Be prepared for the end.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Good question. You know. Anyway, it was very funny. So we met, and he said, and I'm now, you know, I got again to that point where I was frustrated. I couldn't see my way out. I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing this job. I started to clear out my desk. I'm not doing this job. I'm doing anything else, but I'm not doing this anymore. I hate it, and I'm gonna do something different. And I was a little cocky. I said, you know what? Double my income, you know, do this, do that, you know, and I'll think about it, you know. And he said, well, let's make sure there's a cultural fit, which was very smart. And I'm like, you know what, fine.
Yeah.
So I went through the interview process, and the more I learned about that company, the more I liked it, and I really, really liked it, you know. And I thought, okay. And they turned around and they made me an offer for every bit as much as I was asking.
Cha-ching.
You know, and I'm like, wow. You know, here's a funny thing too, though. Never tell what you want. Let them make the first offer.
Yes.
I was making $5,000 less than the person I replaced. You know, duh.
Wow.
But here.
But you were happy with it.
You know what? I was happy with it. You know, I thought, you know what? They gave me what I wanted.
Yeah.
They provided a great environment. I was with the company 9 months, and they sold to the company I just left. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You know.
Wow.
But they brought, anyway, they brought the president with, and the president who I now went to was the guy who is now running that company, and then that was good for about 5 more years. But that second time, you know, it was interesting. To me, what I didn't realize, the lesson I learned, you know, and I was I didn't know what I was going to do. I was frustrated. I was angry. You know, but I stopped believing in myself. You know, I didn't think I was worth any more than what they were giving me, or that anyone else would, you know, would see that in me. You know, but I got that frustration back against the wall. I took the shot. They gave me what I wanted. What I learned was, which was fascinating, the company that at the time it's not in business anymore, was the Prudential Burnett Realty, run by a guy named Ralph Burnett. What I learned was that it was a better cultural fit than the company I was at. It was like you know what I now found at Baird & Warner. You know what I found at Baird & Warner for the last 19 years.
Yeah.
But it was about putting people first, about helping people achieve their goal, about seeing potential, seeing opportunity, and that was not my working experience prior. For the most part, I'm like, wow, this is awesome.
It's life-giving.
Yeah. Oh gosh, totally.
Yeah.
And then what I realized is, I loved managing a branch office.
Yeah.
Just not for that one company.
Isn't that something?
You know, I was like, not there.
Right.
You know,
throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, so then it was I would say it was a really good run. I was there 5 years. I had a great opportunity at Baird & Warner. I took the opportunity at Baird & Warner. You know, the market even, you know, turned down, and just the way Baird & Warner handled that was so amazing.
Yeah.
And just wonderful.
08.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. 12 or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
When the market, and so it's 14 years ago, I switched positions in the company 14 years ago.
Okay.
I started managing in Naperville, best move ever in my career. But what was interesting, what happened in 2013 was the next big hurdle. And you know, you could look back and say, you know, it was a good run, you know, from a financial perspective, everything was going well. And it's so interesting. I remember though, remember this day like it was yesterday. It was a Thursday, and I was trying to get to, my youngest son was a senior in high school, and I was trying to get to his soccer game. And I got out of the office a little late, and I was feeling stressed, and I was just like feeling like my life was like out of control, and it was just bad. I mean, the job was good, the income was fine,
Right.
That was all good, but I just felt like I had a lot of burden. I just felt like I was burdened, And I'm getting to the game late, and I was going to miss the introduction of my son, and I'm just feeling mad at life, and like life kind of sucks, know. And then I got a call from my middle son who said, "Hey, Dad, I just want to let you know I'm in the hospital. I dove into some water that was too shallow, and I can't move my legs." I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, I can't move my legs, and I'm in the hospital." "Where are you?" "In Janesville, Wisconsin." He had been on a wakeboard water ski club just into his sophomore year of college, and he was with the team, sanctioned show course. He got done skiing. He, no drinking, no screwing around. He took off the life vest. A huge storm blew in, lifted up. It wasn't even his vest; it was the team's vest. Lifted it up, sent it down the Rock River. There was a current, the wind. He was being a good guy. He took a dive for the vest, hit his head on the bottom, and paralyzed from the waist down. And I said to him, "Son, it's going to be okay." And he said, "Dad, I don't think it is this time." And I'm like, "Wow, okay." So
And he's a pretty positive guy.
very positive,
Yeah.
very positive. So my wife and I get together. She finds out, I find out. We blow off the soccer game. We start.
All of a
know,
sudden, you're
yeah,
a tough
right.
day.
What I thought was a tough day, and
Yeah.
I thought my life had, was wrought with problems.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's nothing. And one of my favorite, to this day, one of my very favorite quotes is, "Hey, here's the reality of life. Worse things have happened to better people than me." And that still stands, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we go up, we find out, that he had a major spinal cord injury, that left him paralyzed from the waist down. He had emergency surgery up there, and then a couple of days recuperation. Then we brought him down to Northwestern via ambulance. It got really bad there. He started having a series of complications, from a punctured lung to pneumonia to blood clots to all of a sudden it started going to kidney failure. No one knew why. They couldn't predict it. I thought, my gosh, we're going to lose him. Fortunately, he rallied, and he came, and went over to, at the time it was the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. Now it's called the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. So we got him in there, had 3 months of recovery, to see what he could recover, and he made progress, but was, still paralyzed from the waist down, was going to be in a wheelchair. And I brought him home right before Christmas, and I still remember driving up to the house and hitting the garage door opener, and when he saw that ramp going up into the garage, his face fell, and he just became real to him. And I will tell you, the next 15 months were just brutal. He just was in a terrible place, just emotionally and just angry and sad and depressed and just frustrated. And someone said something to me once that you'd say, "Well, imagine if that happened to you," right? Well, usually when you say that, you're processing through that yourself right now, right? And someone said to me, "Imagine that it happened. Think about when you were 19. What if that happened when you were 19? What were you doing when you were 19?" And I was like, wow. Yeah, I was doing all the same things he was doing. I was in the odd jobs business. The only way I was making money was physical labor.
Moving around.
Around.
Yeah.
And, so that was tough. That was really, really tough from a kind of an emotional standpoint. The one big
And this is Matt.
This is my son Matt.
Yeah.
The big defining, my middle child. The one big defining moment was, I went back, and this is where the company was amazing. Every person in Baird & Warner, from my administrative team to the other managers to the executives in the
Supported you
company,
big time.
everyone supported me. To Steve Baird, just amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah.
And so that part was fine, but I was I was trying to get back to the office, and I sat in a recruiting interview, and real estate's a small town, Naperville's a big small town, And I was talking to a recruit, and I said, "Who else are you talking to?" They said, "Oh, I'm talking to so and so down the street." I said, "Oh yeah, I know so and so. You know, he's a good person." And they said, "Oh yeah, I said that about you." And oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about your son. I mean, he just went on and on about what a tragedy and how awful and that. And I thought, oh my gosh, what this guy was doing was planting a seed of doubt into that recruit that if they came to work for
you'll be
me,
too overburdened with this and that.
I'm like,
I didn't know you very well.
son of a gun. So that was time to double down,
yeah,
you know, and so that he was injured in 13, and as I said earlier, 14 is when I was getting ready for the first sales meeting in 2015. In 2014, we got to be #1 in the market, and then in the first sales meeting for 2015, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, our kind of battle cry for the office is over. We accomplished it. We're #1 in the market. Now what? And that's why I said, you know, I'd like to get to $1 billion. And interestingly, that I again doubled down. You know, I thought I was working as hard and focused and whatnot, but all of a sudden, you know, got to a new level. And so, you know, the takeaway is there is always that next level.
Yes.
You know, and it doesn't have to be a tragedy.
No.
You know, you can just decide.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing. You just decide that you know that this is important and that's what you want to do. And I was also panicked because I didn't know what the expense side of his injury would look like.
Yeah.
And,
Or the commitment of your wife.
or the time, or would
Yeah.
she be able to keep teaching? And she
Yeah.
went back to school eventually, you know, teaching school. And so it's like, you know, that was created that motivation to make sure that everything worked in that office, stayed together, and got to that next level.
So Bill, so first off, how's Matthew now?
You know,
What's
he's doing great.
Yeah.
He's just doing great.
Yeah.
He wound up completing a 2-year degree at College of DuPage, you know, mostly online. Then he went on to a bachelor's in finance from Benedictine University. He drives a car with hand controls. In August, or a year ago, he got a job as a financial advisor with a small company in Naperville. He loves the job. He's doing very well at it. In August, he moved in with his oldest brother, Tom, and they have an apartment in LaGrange. They live together, and he's completely independent. And his smart aleck personality is back. His wit, his sense of humor, and he's doing well.
Was there a time where you couldn't see that at all happening?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
How long ago was that?
Seen that. Well, probably I would say 2015. 2015 was really rough. And then as there was kind of slow improvement. Our bottom was on February 12th of 2015. And then we moved in March to an accessible home, and the one
it's been featured.
So
it's been featured in
it's been in the
Tribune.
Yeah. And then that was the start of the I think that he could Matt was able to see what life in a realistic environment was. Our other house was terrible for him, but in a good environment and what was possible. And
what have you learned from Matt, though?
I've learned that it's just never give up. Just never give up. Don't quit, don't give up, stick to it. Some days are going to be better than others. And my daughter, kind of in the middle of this, my youngest posted a note that said, "Not every day is good, but there is good in every day."
Ooh.
Powerful. It's what do you focus on?
Yeah.
What do you focus on?
So Bill, I love it, and that's amazing story, amazing victory, really. I mean, and I could only imagine the stress that it put on your family, your marriage, just having to really pull together. Would you say that your family's stronger?
Absolutely, Steve. It's interesting. I'd say there's 3 things that were on the positive that came out of it. One, it was forced me to kind of look at getting to a different level, and also I had to do a lot more delegating at that time too. Because I just had to. And that was good. And the second thing is my daughter. We moved her to when she was in 7th grade into the Plainfield school system out here, which has been phenomenal for her. She had a great high school experience. I don't know that she would have had that in her old school, but she had just a phenomenal experience. And my 5 kids have become so fiercely close and loyal to one another. I mean, those kids, you know, boy, if you mess with one, you're messing with five. You know, there's
That's
just
great.
it doesn't matter which one. You know,
Yeah.
and they just they're there, they're together, they're supportive. You know, and
It's a blessing.
and yeah, it truly is. And one of my favorite recent times, maybe the best thing that came out of COVID was all 5 kids moved back into the house with us for
Yeah.
you know
It was like
a couple of months.
yeah.
It was like, this is awesome. You know,
That's
everyone
great.
could work from home, everyone had their spots, and you know, it was awesome, just awesome.
You know, Bill, what I'm picking up too is that you got quite a woman in Patty that
Absolutely.
really there were some key moments in your life that she maybe saw some things in you that you didn't even see in
Yeah.
yourself. And it
Absolutely.
was just like, hey, just, you know, shit or get off the pot, go get it.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
And you need that pep talk from
Yeah.
the woman that,
Yeah.
you know, you want to impress the most. You know, it's like, hey, I'll be doggone if she thinks that I can't do this or
Yeah.
whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and she, you know, she's a good critical thinker too.
Yeah.
Like she'll listen, and then say, "How about blah blah blah?" And you're like, "Well, yeah, I guess we could do it that way." You know, I mean, that makes sense. You know, if you want to do the easy route,
Right.
you know, sure. Okay,
That's great. Is there, so Bill, anything else in terms of just overcoming hurdles and,
Yeah, I think so. I think the big thing is, you know, one is always, you know, gratitude, right? Is looking at, you know, what are the things that you can be thankful for. You know, there's a quote I've heard lately a lot is, you can't be stressed and grateful at the same time. You know, if you're grateful, it's impossible to be stressed and overwhelmed.
I love
you know,
that.
so you know, like taking stock of, you know, again, there's nothing's all good and nothing's all bad. What are the good things?
and how do you do that practically, Bill? I mean, you wake up and just say, I'm grateful for this or that, or are you writing it down? What's practical?
Yeah, I've done both.
Okay.
You know, I've written it down. I have you know, when I'm feeling frustrated or whatnot, I'll take a step back and, you know, say, wait a minute, you know,
So you're aware
you
of
can't
just
be
your
stressed.
emotions and not
I try to
the best
be,
of
you
you,
know,
yeah.
not
Yeah.
as well as I should be,
Right.
But you know, it's one of those things just to take that step back. The other thing that I always like, whenever I'm forced with a challenge is, and this is, you know, how I process, but what can I do? Like, what are the action steps? What are the things I can do? What can I do? You know, there's some things completely out of our control. We can't do it, right? But there's always things you can. So what are the things that I can do? What do I need to research? What do I need to look into? What do I need to figure out? Who might have these answers for me, right? And you know, and just if I have that to-do list, then it can feel like, okay, you know,
And
now
it takes
I'm-
you off of
yeah.
all the rest of it. I got these 6 things, and I don't know about the other 40 that I'm worried about,
Yeah,
but these 6,
yeah.
I'm going to handle myself.
Well, and the most important thing, like this most important problem, what are the things that I can do about
Yeah.
it, right? You know, there's another quote, I love quotes, is go as far as you can see, and once you get there, you'll be able to see farther, right?
I love it.
And so that's been a big part. You write that list, you start doing some research, you start learning some stuff, well, you learn some more stuff.
Yeah.
And then you learn some more stuff, you know.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I always say that sales looks like a total waste of time, and then you sell something, and you're like, oh. Every sales job, everything I've ever sold, it's always like nothing's gonna work. Oh, they said, like, you know, they said yes. So now what, you know? And so you feel that's part of the faith part of sales.
Yeah.
That you have to have a vision for what the deal looks like when it's going to close,
Yeah.
and think about it often and work your way towards it every day. So.
Yeah. And what are the steps that get that sale? You know, I read a quote from a guy who said that the true goal of a professional salesperson is to understand what problem that person is having, and then it's your obligation to provide a solution to that problem with your product and service if you can, and if you can't, to also pass and or redirect them to someone who can. You know, and I thought, boy, that's really powerful to say, you know, that doesn't even sound like sales, right? It just sounds like being a good person. Hey, let me find your problem, see if I can help you. If not, let me direct you to someone who can. Right?
Yes, powerful. So okay, anything else in terms of overcoming obstacles, Bill? Have we?
Well, yeah, I think it's just, you know, the framing it, you know,
Yeah.
the framing it and in knowing, you know, what is the upside, what's possible, knowing that it's possible. And
Yeah.
sometimes you need to, you know, borrow that from Les Brown. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes you need to borrow it from a friend or a confidant or someone that, you know, that's close to you to help you through that. I've got a good friend who is in the tire business, and it's kind of funny. If I had stayed in the tire business and followed his path, I would be infinitely more successful than I am today. He's one of the hardest working people I know. He's, oh my God, he's just an amazing guy. And you know, he challenged me, and he knew when to push, he knew when to support, he knew, and we're best friends to this day.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. So you have someone that tells you the hard things and that kind of thing.
Well, and to lean on someone else, if you don't have the strength, like the song, lean on me.
Yeah.
If you don't have that strength, borrow it from someone else until you get it back, and then it's your obligation to give
Pay
it
it
back
forward.
to them. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So okay, Bill, in kind of wrapping up, so we're not looking for any tragedy now to go to the next level. So
Right.
how are you? What
God
is
willing.
it? Yeah, what's in your mind now to go to the next level?
Yeah, so the big thing for me is I'll be candid that I still work too many hours, right?
Okay.
And I've got to figure out how to put better systems, better strategies in place. Bringing on additional people for different roles that I need to support what we're trying to accomplish to get to that next level, right?
Do you feel like sometimes, Bill, if you're not at the wheel, no one is? Like, I gotta be at that wheel to make it happen.
Yeah, I think anyone who's has a lot of drive and maybe is
Yeah.
a little bit of a control freak,
Yeah, and wants to be behind
Or
the wheel.
a race car, they want to be driving it,
Yeah,
Move over, I'll drive this bus.
yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's that, I think that's a very important point. And, so that's what I need to be looking at and say like, okay, here's where I want to go. What do we need to change or do differently? And one of favorite, get another quote is the definition of insanity, doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result. Okay,
Yeah.
if I do the same thing I did last year, if I got the same result, but it was a great year,
Yeah.
but that doesn't get me, that still doesn't put me at $1
Next
billion,
level. Yeah.
right? So I got to do something different. So that's every year it's taking that, trying to step back, take that time to work on your business, not just work in your business. My tire friend Dan Henley and his wife, who are just incredibly hardworking, successful people, they would take a weekend every year where the two of them, no children, anything else, would go away and they every year, and it's that they took that time out to work, and the hardest work people I know, and they would step back and work on their business, not just in it.
That's great. I love it. So, Bill, I feel like this is a master class in really just sales success, life success, and so thanks for spending time
Thank
with
you,
us.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we look forward to just watching you go to the next level.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that, Steve.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.